Hey everyone, we are back, and we just played a little Far Cry 4 with Suyash. Suyash, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. It's been
Yeah,
fun.
it has been a lot of fun. It has been a lot of fun tonight. Not gonna lie. I mean, I'm mostly just like cracking jokes with you and David. It's been great, and the
Yeah.
game was pretty fun to watch. That being said, it's that time of night where we get into the interview with our special guest. And hey, that's you. Are you ready to talk a
Yes, I
little bit
am.
to chat? Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
let's do this.
you know how this works every week, chat. If you're here often, you know how this works. That is, if you have any questions for Suyash, send them to folkwise13@gmail.com or type them in chat, and I will read them to Suyash. If you have anything you want to add or any extra questions that you want to float by him. Other than that, Suyash, if you like any of the questions, if anything, makes you giggle or smirk, do not thank me. Do not thank me. Thank the always intrepid, always wonderful, uh, folk wise interview sleuths who help me put together these questions every week. That being
Mhm.
said, your interview is waiting. Let's. You mind if I ask you some questions real quick?
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into the big stuff first. Let's get into the big stuff. Suyash, you are an ethnomusicologist. We talked about ethnomusicology a little bit on stream, and also there's a channel on our Discord called Ethnomusicology where people post music. But I don't think
Mhm.
we've ever had anyone give a definition. What do you like to tell people ethnomusicology is?
So that's an interesting question. The one classic definition that I was given as an undergrad in my first semester was how music is humanely organized sound,
Mm-hmm.
and ethnomusicology is the sort of study of that. I guess John Blacking was the person saying that, but to me at the moment, it leaves out a lot of things. What about computer generated sound? What about
Yeah.
sounds we make with our non-human, relatives on the planet, like
Mm-hmm.
plants and animals? And the one definition that has struck to me, or sort of I've been thinking about a lot, is I'm not going to say discipline because, I believe, fields of studies should be like a moving target in that there's constant updates happening rather than defining things in a rigid form. I'd go on to say like ethnomusicology is maybe a discourse that tries to understand music of all people, of all times, of all places. And
Mm-hmm.
what I'm doing by that is not relegating to back in the days, ethnomusicology would be anything that was non-Western music would be ethnomusicology.
Yikes.
Um, or like music, if you were doing ethnomusicology, the stereotype was, oh, you'd sail far off to a far off land and do some study of music that was outside of your home. But there are scholars who are doing field work at home or scholarship at home. So, music of all times, of all um, places, of all peoples, and definitely I think especially when you take a look at sound studies, which is
Mm-hmm.
like another way of looking at, because there isn't one definitive idea of what music is. Maybe it's better to sort of look at from a sound perspective, where as an auditory example or auditory experience. So music, or the study or engagement with sound is how I like to see ethnomusicology has. Yeah.
Sure. You talked about all cultures, all people when you were giving that definition.
Hmm.
Briefly, can we transition in some of the things you study?
Okay.
Let me
Yeah.
first say, can I say this first?
Yeah.
Chat, all past and future guests. Suyash filled out his pre-interview about me form the best so far. So these questions really write themselves because you were so good at filling out that questionnaire. But coming from Yeah, this is coming from what you say. I'm sorry. Were you gonna say something
I was just
right
going to
there?
add, it took me 3 days to fill those forms out.
Oh, you can
And
tell
my
there was a craftsmanship to it.
Yeah, and yeah, I had to revise, sort of like go back in time and think about my very first class on January 8th, 2018. It was a snowy day. So I joined IU in the spring semester, like Dr. John McDowell's class that ended way after the sun had set. And I was studying my history of folklore in my first year, first semester of grad school. Bauman and Briggs classic text, like Voices of Modernity, like pages by pages, trying to get, the basic idea of what folklore meant. And I guess the one question, like in the forum, what is folklore to you?
Uh huh.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
question that kept me hanging. Like, oh, this is serious.
What is ethnomusicology to you? No, I
Yeah,
think you
like
just
I
answered
said,
that.
yeah. Um,
Um.
Yeah, but even to add to that definition of ethnomusicology, I've been thinking a lot about time and space lately.
Oh.
And this is going to sound a little bit funny, but in the sense of musicking, like the realm of music that
The
comes
the
out of
the
like
gerund
games.
musicking. Yeah.
Yeah, or Christopher Smalls also sort of used that idea of, any form of engagement with music, you could call it musicking, which I really find interesting. And I shared that with my undergrad students, and they were like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, that's a neat word to use. This sort of, engagement with time and space, as in, what if you were visiting yourself after these many years or going back in time, um, and taking these two as two different entities. Um, so I think there's a lot that could be played with those ideas of, because when we talk about ethnomusicology, historically it has always been about the geographic method of like comparison between cultures across space, but
Mm-hmm.
across time, is also something that could be explored in the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um. So, geez, this is gonna be a fun interview. Okay, Suyash, if you keep dropping these bomb answers on me, it'll be great. But um, I know you talk a little bit in your or a lot in your research about the different types of identities that are expressed among Nepali musicians. Is that correct?
Mhm.
What's the
Yeah.
sort of work you do there?
So my research, I'm trying to focus on the southern part of Nepal
Uh huh.
that borders India. So it's like a very porous border. And I say
Mm,
this without exaggeration, that when I was living in the southern part of Nepal with my family, it wasn't uncommon for me and my dad to sort of, cross the border, like go to India for some chai, for some tea,
yeah.
because people regularly cross the border for trade, for buying stuff, for like visiting temples and such.
Hmm.
um and it so happened that in my third or fourth year of undergrad, I started looking at, or I was trying to understand how the government of Nepal has sort of this hegemonic idea of what a national identity is, like a national identity or the national identity,
Hmm.
all the while sort of erasing the difference, or different ethnicities and identities that exist in Nepal, in terms of caste groups, in terms of ethnicities. So
Yeah.
the basic way that sort of worked for the government was, they were imposing, this is the national dress. This is
Hmm.
the national music. This is the national language. And people who don't identify with these ideas of nationalism that the government sort of propagated in terms of dress, language, music. Um, After the 2006, revolution and
Hmm.
reinstatement of People's Republic that I did mention also in the game, there's a lot of strong movements going on in Nepal about how can we bring, how can we recenter people's focus. Our scholarship that does, on purpose try to destabilize these hegemonic ideas of what it means to be a Nepali. So you can be a Nepali, but you can also be, identifying with any of the other ethnicities or
Yeah.
caste groups or surnames. So I'm trying to work on the southern part of Nepal, where people who speak the language Bhojpuri, who live across Nepal and India, and historically, the government's sort of focus in Nepal has always been in the mountains or the hills, which is why the stereotype image of Nepal is, mountains and hills. But
Yeah.
that constitutes only, less than 30% of the nation's landscape. We're talking about southern plains in Nepal, where there are many other ethnicities and many traditions that come out of these spaces, right? So I'm trying to look at the southern part of Nepal with people who speak Bhojpuri, the music of the Tarai landscape, the music of the southern plains, and how music and food sort of intersect or meet in these
Ooh.
spaces. So in a sense, you could sort of think of the borderlands approach, as in Nepal and India, bordering region.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this bordering of two disciplines, I'm trying to see, what's happening here. There's foodways, food anthropology, and sound studies and ethnomusicology. What I can learn as somebody who goes to this part of Nepal as a student, not as a scholar or expert, and learn from these people how they sort of articulate or express through both, material culture and oral traditions.
That's
I hope.
that That's good because it's actually something I definitely wanted to bring up. Is that I bet a lot of people would see the your two like fields of study, see like ethnomusicology, sound studies, and like
Mhm.
foodways, food studies, anthropology, and think like, oh, how do those go together? But I feel like you're about to. Can you talk more about how ethnomusicology and foodways
Mhm. Mhm.
go together uh, as like a kind of field of study there? Because I feel like you are about to make this pretty easy
Yeah.
for everyone to understand.
Yeah. So at the moment, I'm sort of, trying to prepare my qualifying exams list. So a lot of these materials are some things that I'm sort of newly and sort of revising myself as I go. And the more I speak, it gets sort of easier for
Oh,
me.
good. Yeah. So this is
And
practice for your prospectus. Good.
very much. Um, but there are a couple ways I could look into that. So when I was a student of North Indian classical music, there are historical, musicological, and when I say musicological, I mean texts of Indian classical music that talk
Mhm.
about the relationship of musical notes and colors, how certain notes sort of try to evoke the sounds of certain animals and birds.
Huh.
Um, so there are classic texts like the first the letter, like the solfege, like sa, re, gamma. If you've heard those, all of these are denoted to different colors and different sounds made by different animals. So there's certainly that sort of historical precedence to almost a synesthesia.
Yeah,
This
I was
combination of
gonna say it's a little bit like a synesthesia of sorts.
yeah,
Yeah.
very much. And my big fault is I don't read Sanskrit or understand Sanskrit. And a lot of scholars, as David will able to concur here, are working with translations. So, definitely don't have a first-hand understanding of what's going on, but I can only relate in terms of what my teachers told me or what my gurus told me. So that was the sort of beginning. But even before that, I've often thought about how certain festivals in Nepal have selected songs that are
Yeah.
attached to them and selected food. And there's a festival that's coming in about a month or so where children make small groups, almost like Halloween here. And the interesting thing is Diwali and Halloween fall around the same time.
Hmm.
And if there ever was a Diwali X Halloween event,
A
that would be
crossover event.
yeah, that'd be awesome. But children sort of make small groups, you know, and visit houses in the neighborhood and sing songs. And the host or the owner of the household house or the head of the household, and it's usually the matriarch of the family, brings out a whole tray of sweets that are prepared specially for the festival. And the children actually sing a line in the song saying, let's see what these people are going to give us. Are they going to give us sweets? Are they going to give us this food? And they'll make, interesting parallels about, oh, look how big this house is. It's almost like a giant pumpkin. Um, and songs about food is what I'm trying to allude to.
Yeah.
Um, and recently, I've been sort of trying to look at how experimental psychologists like talk about, these mass experiments that are done about how playing certain kind of music sort of affects people into buying certain kinds of wine.
Yeah.
Classical music, and people sort of like, oh, or like if you were to play music at a loud party where food is involved, versus if you were to play music and then your guests would arrive, the kind of what space is more silent, or where do people maintain more silence. But more recently, I've been thinking about hierarchy of senses, how in at
Mm.
least in western ways of understanding um, the world or being, there's so much of focus placed on what we see
Yeah.
or what is textualized.
Mm.
And I'm looking at anthropology of senses, where folks like to talk about, we can also understand the world from other senses. And just this morning, I was talking to Dr. Deborah Kapchan at the AFST tea talk with scholars,
Yeah.
and she was asking me the same question, like, what are your research? And she helped me sort of understand that
Oh,
um, when you look at how people across cultures understand and sort of theorize and practice their ways of being through other senses, that might be an interesting way to look at things. What if people express, or what if people sort of have their sense of being not through how we see or hear? As an ethnomusicologist, I often think about how I privilege hearing over other
yeah.
senses. But what about taste? What about smell? What about the sense of touch? So it's what I like to call technical mumbo jumbo of a lot of different things that are swimming in my head when I think of how can I think of music and sound in connection to one another, like shared space, and how my ethnographic experience and ethnographic expression can be enriched if I were to sort of look at or engage in all these sensory experiences. I hope I've answered your question.
That was a fascinating answer, bro. That was so cool. Yeah, to think that no, because I find myself like guilty of that bias where I'm just like, hey, you're an ethnomusicologist. How do you study a sense other than hearing? But I realized like, yeah, the way you laid it out, why
Mhm.
does it have to just be that? Exactly. Yeah.
And
Uh
and like there are some pretty fun stuff that got me into this. I was in Dr. Sutui's class.
huh.
He
Oh,
does both
yep. Sue Tui on my
ethnomusicology
one
and
of my
folklore.
professors too. Yep.
Yeah, and one of the papers I read about was like these experiments being done about the disappointment you feel if you were to open this can of soda and it
Mm-hmm.
made none of that
And it
signature.
you didn't get that grip and sip noise. Yeah.
Yeah, if you were to bite into a potato chip and if it doesn't make that crisp, how would you feel?
Oh, this face here.
And then there are like auditory manipulations done in terms of frequency. Like they identify what frequency are sort of what frequency through your headphones could be accentuated. Like you are biting into a stale potato chip that makes no sound,
Yeah.
but the audio engineer or person in charge, this is a fun activity, could be playing a recording of the potato chip sound and sort of heighten or accentuate the frequency that sort of is made when you're biting into the chip, and how it fools basically our senses in terms of wow, the sound, like, and texture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
There's a lot of conversation about how
Tactile.
very much how texture is such a big part of our culinary engagement, and a lot of texture also has auditory cues embedded to it, right? So,
Sure.
um, yeah,
Ah, there's so many tangents I want to go on this. I want to talk about David Sutton, Remembrance of Repasts. I want to talk about. I don't know if you've ever talked about this to Brandon Barker at IU about his phenomenological dissertation about steel guitar strings
yeah,
as like embodiment in steel guitar. But we've got so many other questions to get to tonight, Suyash, and I want to kind of circle
awesome.
back to your undergrad days. You the music school you studied was in Bhaktapur.
Yes.
For people who are unfamiliar, can you talk about what that was like? What the town village? I don't know how you would describe it.
Hmm.
What it was like studying music there, and like what you missed the most about it.
Oh, so Bhaktapur, first of all, has a long history in the history of Kathmandu Valley. So back in the
Mm-hmm.
days, there used to be three kingdoms, and it's the story of the same family that sort of have feuds and then make their own kingdoms within the valley. Bhaktapur, I was born, so I belong to Lalitpur, which is another city in the valley. And the name Kathmandu, actually, its older name is Kantipur. So Kantipur means the city of brilliance.
Mm.
Lalitpur is the city of fine arts. Bhaktapur is the city of devotion. So Bhakta is a devotee or a devoted person. So
Sure.
Bhaktapur definitely has like a lot of Hindu, Buddhist, tantric sort of sites of worship, and is sort of and a lot of religious and spiritual sites in Kathmandu Valley are sacred to both these religions, right?
Yeah.
So definitely, which is why I said earlier when we were playing the game, is that when I asked somebody during my ethnographic fieldwork, hey, like, what religion do you follow? They simply pointed out a little shrine at the corner of the road and said, that god over there, that deity. And that sort of made me realize how futile my attempt at, like, putting people into boxes of religion was, because
Mm.
there are folks who are sort of practicing both these religions with equal vigor. But Bhaktapur, and I don't know the pros and cons of this sort of way of thinking, but my teachers always said how places such as Bhaktapur, Lalitpur, or Kantipur were living museums, in that you could actually see people who've been continuing their family profession across the generations. So the
Yeah.
division of labor in Nepal, not only because of caste system, but also your family name would sort of denote what work you did.
Yes.
And Bhaktapur was definitely a town where I got to sort of see that firsthand. I'm not saying that wouldn't happen in Kantipur or in Lalitpur, but in Lalitpur, I was living in this, previously agricultural space that was now being, plotted, and houses were being built. So I was definitely not aware of things happening. But in Bhaktapur, it was like I would finish my classes at about 12 day noon, and then just stroll around the city and look at these temples where prayers were being offered, where people were sort of where the potter was making their potteries, the blacksmith and the metalsmiths were working on their material culture, and you would also see like younger generations sort of learning from the elders. um,
Mm.
and what I really miss about all of that is two things. Bhaktapur is famous for its yogurt, and there are multiple
Ooh.
families making yogurt, and it's really it's like, imagine this thickest of yogurt you can find without a drop of water, and
Yeah.
and they make yogurt in earthen, clay trays. So the yogurt maker, whose family have been making yogurt for generations, has a really good relationship with the potter, because the potter knows exactly what kind of trays you need to make this
Yeah.
yogurt soak up all the moisture and water when you're making yogurt. And the yogurt is basically sweet, but not, it's not Kroger yogurt sweet, but it is sweet. Like it sweetens your palate.
Yeah.
Um, that is the one thing I missed. The other thing is in my final year, final semester of my undergrad, there was the 2015 earthquake in Nepal, and my
Mm.
department was devastated in
Oh wow.
ruins. This was a over 200-year-old building that the German embassy had given funds um,
Hmm.
with the promise that the head of department would renovate an old building to be used as music school rather than establish a new one. So we were living at this site where back in the days, saints or sages or monks would sort of come and live or stay for the night, like an inn.
Hmm.
But yeah, this place was sort of completely destroyed by the earthquake. So those are the two things I definitely miss about my undergrad and my
Yeah.
relationship to Bhaktapur.
One of
Yeah.
them being like something that was, irrevocably changed, and the other one getting more into like anthropology, a sense this is a taste that you can't find elsewhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, and it's fascinating because Bhaktapur is also known for being a farmer's town, and
Talk
that
about
does,
this. Yeah.
yeah, and farmer's town, and the interesting thing is 1600s or 1700s, the king sort of decreed that certain portions of what was grown in the farm would be used as a payment for the musicians who were performing for
Mm.
ritual purpose or for the music ceremonies. So that is also where I did get to see this relationship between how musicians were sort of deeply connected to the farmers.
Yeah.
And after the farmers would get their job done in the fields, every evening they would gather in their own neighborhood and play music together. And dual professionship is something that's really interesting in Nepal, where and this has a lot of caste connotation as well, especially in non-Newar communities. And Bhaktapur is definitely a Newar community
And what's that?
town. So Newars are the indigenous folks in
Mm.
Kathmandu Valley,
Mm.
and you'll find them in across Kathmandu valleys in different cities, and all of these cities have different histories. But it's really fascinating how within a span of like what 5 minutes of bus or car ride, you'll find difference in dialect of the
Huh.
same language. And then like the people
So cool.
in Patan, for instance, will say the people in Bhaktapur speak Nevari, but they speak it so different. And the people in Bhaktapur, as I've been told, are the ones who speak classical Nevari, like they'll
Mm.
use. And as somebody who doesn't speak Nevari, but my dad and my grandma, they do speak Nevari, and that's been one of my dreams is to learn this language to understand in a better way like what's going on with especially in terms of how farmers and musicians sort of engage
Yeah.
in the same cultural space.
And that totally sounds like something that would be right up your avenue of intellectual interests, and not just, I mean, because you, on one hand, you
Hmm.
want to study the byproducts that both the farmers and the musicians make, but of course the fact that like the farmers and the musicians have this long
Hmm.
standing relationship is so fascinating. Just shows how you can just like see like the network forming just like as you're thinking
Yeah,
about it, you know what I mean?
yeah, and also like after the earthquake, it was, and I even told this to Dikshant, who was already here at IU.
Dick Shant, another
Um,
ethnomusicologist, friend of ours.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's also from Nepal, and I
Yes,
remember like
also
when
from Nepal.
he had come to Nepal, and I was like applying to IU. I remember talking to him and sort of observing, and this was before I had done any of these methods or fieldwork classes.
Hmm.
I remember telling him that ever since the earthquake, farmers who would spend their time in the field have been, they now have to spend time, renovating their homes and fixing things. And here's the thing: without the agriculture, the music is not going to happen. So, our
Yeah.
agriculture isn't just about physical sustenance for us folks, but it's also musical sustenance. Like it keeps the culture alive. And that was one moment where it sort of um, prematurely, struck to me that there's no point in just isolating, as I used to think, like, oh, I'm just going to study music.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, music has, and now I feel brave enough to say, like, yes, music has its own contexts, but there's something beautiful about intercontextuality happening with the context of the musicians, the context of the farmers, and the whole town that comes alive when music happens in Bhaktapur. In fact, there's a scholar who actually made a mandala representation of the town of Bhaktapur based
Huh.
on the eight mother goddesses that I named earlier, how
Hmm.
they were situated in the border peripheries of this town. So musicians actually go in a clock wise circle to these different shrines and play music. And one of my ethnomusicology professor would always say, it's almost like a video game, They go around the town, and when they play the music, the god comes to life. It's almost like a power up scenario.
Oh
Like
my
this
god, I
is,
would play that game on stream with you in a
yeah,
heartbeat.
he was from Germany, Fabian Bakels. Like I think he did his MA, and then I've lost touch with him. But it
Hmm.
was such a fascinating thing, like to hang out with him and sort of talk about these ideas of how a small space could be deified or deified,
Yeah.
um, and the spiritual aspects of like why go around in a clockwise direction, and the mandalic representation of Bhaktapur, and how place and space sort of tie into that uh, realm of thinking. Yeah.
Fascinating stuff, Suyash.
Hmm.
Very interesting. Can I ask you a
Thank
question
you.
about work you've already done?
Um. Yes. Yes.
Um, you curated an exhibit for the Archives of Traditional Music at Indiana
Hmm.
University about is his name Terrence Betch? Is that how you
Yes.
say it? Yeah.
Terence Beck.
Beck.
Yeah.
Okay, that's German Beck. Was Terrence Beck, and what can you tell us about his work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, um, and once again, I would like to fly back to my undergrad days, because
Yeah.
my very first undergrad class was 2011, August 8. It was Professor Wegner, a
Okay.
German ethnomusicologist who's been living in Nepal for about 40 years now.
Wow.
Um, and he taught our ethnomusicology 101 class. So he had told me about how there was this guy called Terence Beck, whose Nepali music collection was housed at Indiana University, which
Huh.
is
Yeah.
partly the reason I'm here, because all through my undergrad, that was my goal. Like, how can I get my, how can I get um, whatever opportunity I can get to listen to Beck's collection? But Terence Beck was a Peace Corps volunteer who traveled extensively across Nepal, mostly by foot, back in the 60s and 70s. So we're talking about a time, and by the way, he was also a mountaineer. Um,
Mm.
and there seems to be this sort of not a tradition, but how would you call it? I do also know of other scholars who came to Nepal who were also interested in mountaineering, like Reinhardt. Johann Reinhardt was another anthropologist, mountaineer.
Uh huh.
So this idea of adventure, I think, has sort of seeped into Nepal's idea of a country where you can get musical. sort of research done and also enjoy an adventure. But
Yeah.
Terence Beck was a mountaineer walking across Nepal, and if you read his letters or sort of correspondence to IU or the university, you'll
Yeah.
find how he was carrying, and this was before we had like voice recorders the size of our TV remotes. This was back
Yeah.
in the day where you had to carry batteries to
Yeah.
do and tapes,
Yeah, the big
and
tapes.
big tapes. And in the mountains, in the Himalayas, in the cold, you know what that does to the batteries.
I bet.
You know what rain, moisture, all of these difficulties. Um, and yeah, so he was traveling across Nepal, and he made what many scholars and I would agree. He did this, um, really extensive, fascinating, the most definitive collection of Nepali music
Mm.
that is housed outside Nepal. The beautiful thing about that is we have, his collection at the Archives of Traditional Music with two cupboards full of diaries and field notes that have
Wow.
yet to be
Wow.
digitized. They're written in Nepali, and when I was at the archives working as a GA, I would often go through these materials and try to learn something. Um, and also the audio collection repatriated to a library in my hometown in Nepal. So before I came to IU, I would often visit the library to sort of listen to at least have a trailer of what I was to encounter in my grad school. But Terence Beck was a Peace Corps volunteer, and
Mm.
there's a
Mm.
lot of Peace Corps volunteers that did scholarly work across the
Yeah.
world. So yeah, he's currently in Netherlands. Last we heard, his last email to the IU Archives of Traditional Music was in 2012, I believe,
Okay.
and we've not heard from him
Oh,
since
interesting.
then.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
and
fascinating.
yeah, I've been wanting to, I've always wanted to speak to this person, but I'm like, tell me about your field work. I'd be interested in it, but
Yeah. So, how did
you
it
know,
feel to like hear about that all underground and then finally get to like get your hands on all that?
um, excitement at the same time. I felt um, that an opportunity was waiting for me because,
Mm.
almost 3 decades had passed since Beck did his fieldwork in Nepal, which means there have been a lot of changes since then. There's been the civil war. There's been
Yeah.
two people's revolution. Reinstatement of different governments, and even on an administrative level, the names of cities and towns of all these ethnographic details that are in his fieldwork, many of these have sort of changed. So Alan Burdett, the director at the Archives of Traditional Music,
Great
he
guy.
sort of asked me to look at this collection and sort of, so I wanted to go through these and see like what more remarks or context you could add.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was an interesting experience for me to add what I knew, to say like, hey, this is how this place is spelled, or this festival doesn't seem right to me based on the calendar records, or
Mm. Mm.
and a lot of other sensitive stuff like how people's names or people's caste names or surnames were sort of documented in Beck's collection, and trying to put a note saying at the moment, like, we don't really use these terms because they are derogative, and
Mm.
not respectful of the people and the cultures. So I would say that was a big learning process for me.
Yeah. I'd say the archives were lucky to have you.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
In general too. Suyash, can I ask you some fun questions?
Yes.
All right. So your Instagram handle is famously PH Dumplings. What is your philosophy about dumplings?
That's a hard question. That must be the hardest question in this interview. Uh, So,
Feasibly, PH dumplings. You know dumpling philosophy.
uh, like the Kung Fu Panda, remember that scene?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. The
remember
secret
the famous
ingredient.
scene? Yeah. Um, and I mean, for me, what interests me most about dumplings is my PH dumplings. I always see that as in PhD dumplings. So,
Yes.
you could sort of think of it as I'm going to eat as many dumplings as it takes to get a PhD, or dumplings for life and things like that. But dumplings to me is a story of migration. So we're talking about
Mm.
1850s, and much before that, when there's always been this trade between Nepal and Tibet.
Hmm.
So Nepali traders, when they went to Tibet, it is said, and this is one of the many stories, depending on like who you speak to, they'll say that Nepali traders brought back dumplings while they were returning, and after that, it got really popular. But I would say even before that, when traders sort of have been sort of crossing across the Himalayas for, and there's a really great movie if you want to sort of take a deep look into that. It's called Caravan. I don't
Hmm.
know the name it was released with in the US, but in Nepal it was definitely called Caravan. It's about a tribe in the Himalayas that cross the Himalayas every year annually to sort of sell salt and procure other stuff that they
Huh.
need for the village. And salt trading was a big part of what Nepal did with Tibet, because the salt from the Himalayan caves.
Yeah.
Um, and dumplings is a story, at least for me, in terms of understanding. So this food, is definitely coming from another culture, another space, and how Nepalese have sort of embraced it, and made it a part of their culture. Um, and I'm not the one who wants to claim like, oh, dumplings are definitely Nepali and you'll never find them anywhere. That would be really bad to do. But I will say that, as somebody who's now here in the US, making dumplings is definitely what connects me to home, connects me
Oh,
to the memories of home. It's almost like the Proustian episode of
the
where,
the
this.
Proustian Madeline,
Yes, that's what I mean.
the
Yeah, Proustian
Suyashian
Madeline,
dumpling.
Asian dumplings. You could think of it that way. And it's also a fun activity. It sort of builds, at least for me, you're sitting around the table making dumplings. You
Yeah.
can have 7 or 8 folks, and that's exactly how it's done back home, where you don't sit alone and make dumplings. It's a family event. If there's nobody, you open your window, scream to the neighborhood, somebody's gonna come. You say, "Hey, I'm making dumplings. Hey, neighbor, where are you going? Can you please come help me?"
Goodness.
It's just something that I think in terms of community building, as well. And there's a lot of personal sort of memories attached to it, but also communal ideas attached to dumplings.
Unlike how
Yeah.
you said that was hard, and then you just knocked it out of the park. You crushed that answer.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks.
Um, moving on to another food question. Suyash, how would you introduce your favorite American food, funnel cake, to Nepal?
Ah,
Am
oh boy. Yes, I remember that.
I
That was
right
the
to say
same
funnel
thing.
cake is your favorite American food, by the way?
It
Oh,
still
yes.
is.
Yes.
It still is. And
Nailed it.
folks, that was in Ohio.
That was in Ohio.
Um,
That was at Red, White, and Blue Ash, 4th of July, when I
yeah.
watched you eat funnel cake for the first time.
hmm And that was also where I did my first Grater's ice cream with handmade French pop stuff.
That's right.
That
Grater's
that
ice
company's
cream.
been yeah that company's been running for 150 years. So cheers to them. But funnel cake is, how do I describe it? It's it fills you up, and you gotta eat it slow, savor every bite of it.
Hmm.
The best part is when the powdered sugar, fall into the gaps and cracks of the funnel
Yeah.
cake. Um, and the sugar is a bit melted because of the heat, but it's still dusty enough to, um, you know, dusty enough to sort of choke you if you're trying to eat it fast. You get what I mean, Dom? Like you're trying to
Yeah.
eat a powdery stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, and I liked it. I think it for some reason I keep connecting that to rainy. Was it raining when we were in Ohio? I don't remember.
Probably. Yeah, I think
Um,
not on 4th of July, but around the days around it.
yeah, and it does also remind me of a few other, you know, desserts that are made um, during festivals like village fairs
Yeah,
in the
tell me
southern
about
part
that.
of Nepal. So in India, there's this sweet, and the idea of sweet and dessert is kind of confusing because in Nepal you don't really
Mm.
have desserts after your meal. Um, but in village fairs, malpua is a kind of so you make a batter with dough and water. Some people also put bananas, like my mom does.
With most
She
bananas?
believes, yeah. So you just make a thick batter, and you take a ladle full of the batter and drop it on hot oil, so that the oil is so hot that the batter doesn't float at the
Yeah.
bottom. It just floats upwards and creates this beautiful disc that is crispy on the outside and puffy in the
Ooh,
middle. That the texture of funnel cake is, I sort of find connected to that
sure.
particular sweet. Um, but in general, fried food, like what's not to love about fried food, right? Especially if you can.
The heart disease.
Yeah, I know, but
In the
tonight's the
short term,
party.
what's not to love?
What's not to love? Yeah. But it's almost like that episode on Samurai Gourmet, if you watched on Netflix, where this gentleman, it's a Japanese show about this gentleman who's just retired. And since he has nothing to do in the daytime, he keeps visiting these restaurants around his neighborhood. And he
Hmm.
takes a spoonful of this tofu stew, and he says, this feels so good. Um, I know this is gonna be unhealthy for me, but it feels so good. It's almost that like that thing,
Yep.
the little joys in life. Um, but yeah, I think I love funnel cake. That is still my favorite American food.
It's a great choice. It's a great choice.
Hmm.
Um, speaking of food, I'm gonna throw out a folklore word and say, give us a memorit, a first person supernatural, a first person retelling of a supernatural event. Can you give us the memorit of the sort of supernatural, spiritual experience you had inside Jungle Jim's World Market in Cincinnati?
Oh yeah. So
First, tell the
that's the
people
other
if they don't know
place.
what Jungle Jim's is. I hope they know because it's my favorite place.
So
But
Jungle Gyms is an institution. You can cite me. You can cite me. You can quote me on that.
An institution.
Anybody.
there it is, chat. Cite them, clip it, and ship it.
Um, for like any, and I've been doing this for about 2 years now. Any international student I meet who says, I miss home, tell them Jungle Jim's your friend. You need to
Yes,
you need to
yes.
do a pilgrimage there. Mind you, I'm only using serious words. I use the word institution, pilgrimage. I don't throw these words around lightly.
Yeah.
Um, but Jungle Gyms is this amazing place where I got to see veggies and fruits that I'd not seen in 2 years ever since I'd left Nepal. And
Hmm.
I've not been home. I've not been to Nepal for about 4 years now, so that's a long time. And I've also been once with Kurt after our visit. But Jungle Gyms
Yeah.
is this place where I got to see stuff that I'd not seen, for 2 years.
It's
And you
home.
remember that episode where subconsciously I was walking around Jungle Gyms and patting the rice sack.
Yes, I can't. I will not forget that for all my days.
Yeah, and then for those of you, there's a lot of memes about that. How
Mm-hmm.
Asian dads like walk around the grocery store patting the rice sacks. I don't know what happens out of it, but there's a great joy to be achieved by this folk practice. So yeah, maybe did I answer your question of
I think you
memo
certainly
dot
did.
com?
You went into like a dad trance and started patting all the rice sacks and being like, "Oh, look at these fruits! I'm back home."
And also,
So yeah,
like, I remember, Dom, I was saying, I wish I could take everything.
yeah.
That's the other thing. And
I
that's exactly what my mom says when she's visiting markets or village fairs, like these open air, like Sabzi Bazaar or vegetable bazaars at home,
yeah.
where I wish I could take everything. That's exactly what happened to
I
me,
remember you
folks. Where
stopping and looking around and just going like, just nodding, just being like, "Yeah, yeah. This is
yeah,
this is this is where it all is."
this and yeah, like the pop culture reference. For instance, there is a tuk tuk hanging on the ceiling right above the Nepali aisle. And
Mm-hmm.
Jungle Gyms is the only place in the US where I've seen a separate aisle for Nepali food, because a lot of time
Yeah,
Nepali food gets lumped with Indian food or like South Asian food or like ethnic food. It's like, oh, look at
exactly.
this little stuff. But Jungle Gyms, does it good, where they are like particular about what they have, and they also got the best. Like, I think I bought 2 sacks of rice,
Yeah,
and a box of ramen because I had to
soy
do it.
chunks. Don't forget the soy chunks,
The soy chunks, and
which I
Dom
love.
had soy
Those were
chunks
so
for the first
good.
time.
Um,
Yeah,
Suyash, can I ask you 2 questions from chat before we move on to the last 2 things I want to get to in your interview?
yeah.
Okay. First off, do you have any tips on folding bao?
Dom.
Like, have you ever like the big Chinese dumplings that are like super folded? Have you ever
Mhm.
made those? Joel Chapping in chat asks if you have tips on folding bao.
Hi, Joe. That's a great question, and so and here's a little sort of insider thing. Um, uh, th- in Nepal, when I was making dumplings, every member of the family has their own signature shape.
Oh wow.
I always made crescent shape, like half moon. Like they look like gyoza to some extent.
Sure.
In Nepal, it gets easier because you can say momo, and depending on where you are, the shapes vary. So let's say in the same household, some folks want to eat vegetarian, some folks want to eat meat dumplings. They'll be shaped differently so that you don't confuse and you don't offend anybody who's a vegetarian by offering them meat, because especially if this is a person of a higher stature in the family, you don't want to offend them. But one thing I do is, so let's say you have a circle, and this is a cookie from IKEA, by the way.
Okay. I was gonna say,
Let's say,
do you have a Momo right
oh, I don't. I wish.
there?
Um, but fill this up in the center, and try to fold in from 4 sides so that the center
Hmm.
touches almost like this, and just hold the top and twist it. That is how I did it when I was just learning from my mom. The other way is like place it on a clean surface, and that way you can manipulate dumplings as you're folding them. My mom, what I've seen her doing is, as she's folding, she will push the fillings with her thumb. So it requires precision, which I unfortunately do not have. But you're folding and also twisting the dough at the same time. Like you're folding it with the 2 fingers and pushing it with your thumb so that it doesn't come out. And that way you can have a bow. What my brother did was make a half moon shaped crescent shape, and just join the top 2 parts like this.
Hmm.
um, yeah, but these are all, I hope I've and that's one problem I wish to highlight in my dissertation is when I'm talking about food, it makes no sense if I were to just textualize it or
Yeah.
verbalize
Oh,
it,
yeah.
which is why I'm thinking of accompanying whatever I do with a short film to
Hmm.
sh- to actually show the food making process, because I can say, oh, these people make bread, and I'm like, what bread? Which specific bread are you talking about?
Yeah.
What shape?
Yeah.
um but that's an awesome question, thank you.
Um, this other question from chat. This comes from Hoin K, and so she's going to Nepal this month,
Oh yeah,
and she's here
awesome.
for this interview to ask you this question. Okay, so Yash, please tell me the place she needs to go, or please tell me the place I need to go in Nepal. She writes, beside Kathmandu, Everest region, and Pokhara. She already knows she's going there. Where else should
Mhm.
she go if she's interested in culture and nature, especially if there's anything special to do in Nepal, October and November? So, where else should she visit when she's in Nepal?
Okay, that's an awesome question. So the one place that comes to mind is Chitwan, Chitwan. So Chitwan is where my parents live. And Dom, you can also share that video of the rhino running around town.
Yeah,
That
that's
I saw.
there. Okay.
So
Whoa,
Chitwan is a
what?
place. Yeah, as David, as you were playing this game, and when two rhinos came and hit your truck,
Yeah.
I sent Dom a video of a rhino
Rhinos attacking it, running around
No, it
town.
was just rhinos just like having a
walking around.
lackadaisical stroll through downtown.
Yeah, imagine that in Bloomington. It'd be awesome. Uh, but Chitwan is the place, and Chitwan is known for the wildlife reserve.
Oh, sure.
So you can go see, and there's a lot of ethical conundrums to it. If you don't want to do the elephant rides, you can do the jeep safari and
Okay.
see tiger, rhinos, tigers, elephants. So Chitwan is a place. The other place is, remember how we were talking about how the American usual pronunciation for AJ Gale would be Ajay Ghale in Nepali? There's a
Yeah.
place called Ghale Gaon, village of the Ghale people.
Huh.
Um, Let me find that and actually send it. Um, Ghale Gaon, Nepal. And I don't. Oh yeah, I'm gonna send a Wikipedia page because I don't want to
Cool.
send the travel tourist thing.
Sure.
The
Sure.
Dom, do you have a? Where can I? How can I send this to you through chat?
Post it. Post it in Discord. I'll put it in the Twitch chat.
Discord general chit chat.
Oh no, just DM me. Or if you put a general Twitch chat, I'll find it.
Yeah. So
Here we go. Here we
Galegaon
go.
is this place. Yeah, Galegaon. Um, it's nearby Pokhara, but you can see a lot of mountains from there. You can see the
Mm.
Fishtail Mountains. You can see Mount Annapurna 1 and 2 and 4. So that's a win-win situation. The other place is Shermathan, and that's where I went with one of my friends, and we were supposed to be there for 3 days, but we ended up being there for about a week. And this place is known to be a vegetarian village. Like there are Buddhist folks who live there, and they don't eat meat because
Mm.
they believe Guru Rinpoche, the Buddhist guru, gets angry when they kill an animal. So I was happy. Like as a vegetarian, nobody was offering, but there was a festival that happened there, and it begins at 6 p.m. until 12 midnight, where the people from that village and neighboring village are like holding hands in circles and dancing around a big bonfire.
Yeah.
And for about 4 to 5 days, the monastery feeds the whole whoever comes in.
Cool.
You don't have to cook.
And what time of year is that? Is that around now?
I can find that out. It's
Like if she's there in the next 2 months?
yeah, maybe not that time.
Okay. But still,
Yeah.
that village sounds awesome.
Yeah, but Golegaon is definitely a place to sort of
Cool.
look at. Yeah.
Well, Suyash, you've given me a good introduction into your final question before we get
Awesome.
to your game.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned you were a vegetarian. So Suyash and I, we've actually conspired to do something special here. Ladies and gentlemen, NBs, everyone, welcome once again to Hot Folks. It's the show with hot questions and even hotter folks. Today I'm joined by Suyash. And Suyash, you love hot ones. I love hot ones. And I had to ask you a question in the style of hot ones tonight. So I'm going to be doing this chicken drumstick here with torchbearer sauces, all natural zombie apocalypse sauce. This was like, I think it's sauce 8. It used to be sauce 8 on hot ones for a while.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put some of this zombie apocalypse sauce on this wing. Suyash, being the consummate vegetarian, you're just gonna eat some peppers raw. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
I was thinking I should roast them, but yeah, these are Thai green peppers, and this is a Korean pepper that Alan at the archives gave me.
Oh,
from
nice.
His farm, so.
Oh yeah. Oh, this farm is great, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I did a little dab. I did a little dab of zombie apocalypse. Suyash, you give me 3, 2, 1, and we'll eat this. Then I'll ask you a question.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Ooh, this one's hot.
Oh, it's so good. It's got so much flavor too. It's not just heat. It's my. This has been pointed out on chat before, or on the on stream before. But Sean Evans, one of my favorites. My goal is to make it on Hot Ones one day. But Suyash, as we're eating this hot food, my question for you is: what is your spiciest take, your strongest opinion about the YouTube show Hot Ones?
My spiciest take, you mean, as in critique?
No, it doesn't have to be a critique, but just like your thing you feel strongest about regarding the show.
I think they should have that show instead of Good Morning America on national TV.
That's a top tier hottest take.
That is great. Yeah, just. Are you saying instead of like when the guest comes on Good Morning America, or like when they report the news, they should be eating chicken wings?
Early in the morning.
Please say both.
Just 6 a.m. Yeah.
Please say both.
Both, yeah. Like, imagine this, Tom. When I was studying in India, like early in the morning, the breakfast was in South India, it was hot. It was some good amount of like black pepper and red hot peppers, in my dosa and sambar, and I would choose that, like you wake up, and not only are you awake, your senses are awake. You're ready as an ethnographer or not to like embrace what the world has to offer in the best way possible. And here's the thing: hot food like keeps you on your toes, so you're gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna jump into this like nobody's business. So that should be on national TV.
I love this. Yeah, specifically the early morning show. That as David said, you like an amazing hot S tier hot take.
Thanks.
That is to say, do you want to jump into something right now? Because we've got one more thing before like Sean Evans, we roll out the red carpet for you, this camera, that camera. We got one more thing we want to do with you. David, are you sharing the window we need?
Just about.
Just about. Okay. Well, we play a game with the guest a lot of the time. Most of the time we make a tier list. We
Mm-hmm.
if you've seen the show, you know that. But last time we had like a music scholar on. We tried a new thing where we did a like make a playlist live on the air, and
Mm-hmm.
can you see it? Can you see it, Suyash?
Oh,
No.
Maybe
allow
keep
me to, yeah. Let
here.
me
It's yeah,
switch my stream to it.
yeah. Anyway, we wanted to there it is. We wanted to this time make a playlist with you on Folkwise's Spotify. So after you make this, everyone will be able to listen to this playlist. I say
Awesome.
nine songs or less. Can we run through? Can you make a playlist for us?
Mm-hmm.
One thing we didn't really get to talk about in your interview, then I know I want to talk to you about because you had mentioned about making music and
Yeah.
like retro music, 80s music, synth music. Specifically, I know you love the Stranger Things soundtrack, but about
Yes.
that kind of like it's like synthwave 80s nostalgia as like a recreation of nostalgia or a repurposing of electronic
Mm-hmm.
music to make you like feel a certain way. And I think I just want to get you to jump right into this. Suyash, can you make us a
Mm-hmm.
playlist of your favorite songs featuring the synthesizer?
Awesome. So
Cool. And David, when he says it, just go in and search and add it to the playlist.
the one song that I guess um really got me there's this YouTube channel called Recycle Bin, and they did a remix for the Stranger Things theme.
Yeah.
Um, can also find it. So that's
If you can't find it on there, at least can we put like the Stranger Things theme if we can't find the remix on Spotify?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's C418 remix.
The C418 remix, if that exists.
C418. Yes, that's the artist. C418 artist. I do see the artist. Oh, if you
These are all Minecraft. What? What is it?
no, that's not the person.
Well,
Wait, that's a different thing.
That's a
let's
different thing.
yeah at the very least let's get a Stranger Things a Stranger
Any
Things remix.
would do. So C418's remix. The other one, I guess, that I constantly return to would be Kavinsky's Night Call.
Ooh,
So Kavinsky's Night Call is really sort of, it's one of the songs that I keep revisiting. But
there it is.
yeah, Kavinsky's Night Call. There's another song that Kavinsky did, which was Pacific Coast Highway, and it starts with a police siren. And we were driving to Indianapolis, me, Alpha, and Worshia, and that song came on the playlist. She was like, "What? What's happening? Why did you put this song?" So, yeah, Pacific Coast Highway. Essenger is a new and upcoming artist. Essenger. It's like messenger without the Essenger. He's got a song called Empire of Steel.
Empire Steel.
Yes. And After Dark. No, Midnight is another band that comes out of California. The Midnight. And The Midnight. Yeah, there's the Midnight Artist. Los Angeles is cool, but let me go. So that song, Jason, is about Jason Voorhees. A good one for Halloween. Gloria is the song that
Gloria, I see it.
yeah, and the music video for Gloria, and also Lost Boy. And the reason I have Gloria, the Midnight Lost Boy, is this name? So Gloria's music video on YouTube has Back to the Future montage.
Okay.
And Lost Boys music video has Ryan Gosling's Drive movies, video clips. So, oh, sorry. Also, Blade Runner, Vangelis,
Oh yeah, Evangelist who did the Blade Runner soundtrack. Awesome.
Vangelis, and
ELIS, right?
yeah, Vangelis. There's some Blade Runner blues or something he does.
Blade Runner
Blade Runner
Blues.
blues.
David, how many tracks is that so far? 7?
7.
Seven.
Perfect.
And there's also who do I go? John Carpenter.
Oh, you gotta do John Carpenter.
any of John Carpenter's.
Yeah, I
And,
was actually telling the sleuths when we made this, like he has to pick the Halloween theme, right?
yeah. John Carpenter. And for those who are sort of interested in synth and retrowave, Rise of the Synths is a documentary movie that came out. I've not had the fortune of watching it, but I definitely want to sort of watch the movie and review it, watch the documentary. So number 9 would be Nina. So Nina is a German, an artist based in Germany.
Nina, or is it Nena? Nena.
No, not Nina. Nina. Nina has this song called Automatic Call. So if you write Automatic Call, it should come up.
There's your 9.
Automatic Call, and
Automatic Call
number 10 is Robert Parker's Running Wild.
All right. And what is
That's
this? And what is this one?
This is also heavy synth,
Cool.
and I mostly, I myself get confused between how folks define dark synth or like ambiance and those stuff.
Yeah.
But I definitely, these are some of the songs that right top of my head.
So yeah,
Awesome.
People asking in chat if you follow that link and go to Folkwise's Spotify. We have some curated playlists. We're always trying to, and we have some like playlists that we get submissions for all the time. But yeah, we now have our second live playlist. We have Derek Peters' autoethnographic song "Catch Your Journey," and now we've got Suyash's greatest synth songs. 10 absolute bangers, and I do like how you like incorporated some soundtracks in there too, because like it is totally I feel like what you the things you like about the synthesizer and like the sort of like nostalgia and like the blending of like popular culture and folk culture, I think is very well wrapped up in that playlist, Suyash.
Thank you. And it kind of reminds me of an assignment we had for a global pop class where we asked students to pick 10 songs and create an autobiographical curated list, and they get to put the songs there and talk about why they feel connected to it. So
yeah,
here's my attempt at something similar.
You did it.
Thank you.
Now we get back to our what do you call it? Our hot ones moment where you go, Suyash, you survived the interview. If you got anything to plug, this camera, that camera, let the people know what you got going on.
So yeah, I'm gonna be appearing for my quals next semester or the end of this semester, and I'd be really interested in if you've got ideas or any materials that you come across that talk about the senses, especially pertaining to food and sound, because there's a lot that I need to draw from different disciplines, but I firmly believe that people you hang out with in the discipline are often the most overlooked resources in that,
Mhm.
why do we value materials at the library or books, and not reach out to people who actually know about certain things? So that's one thing. And yeah, follow me on PH Dumplings. I'm back after a little bit of hiatus, and I'm going to be cooking some stuff and putting it out there. So PH Dumplings is the name. Thank you.
PH Dumplings is the name. I'm linking the blog and the Instagram right now for you to follow. But for everybody who hangs out here all the time, it's the end of the interview, so you know what to do. Give Suyash a hearty GG in the chat. If you got some ladders, post some ladders. Let me see let me see a big ass wall of ladders in chat to thank Suyash for coming on the show.
Hmm.
Suyash, thank you for a great interview. I honestly could keep talking to you, but I feel like I need to stop at some point. Thank
Yeah,
you for a
yeah,
great interview. I can do this all day, dude.
yeah. Likewise, and I really enjoyed this. So thank you for having me here. And yeah, have a good night, everyone. Take care. And this was
Yeah,
so much fun. This
Yeah.
it
was
really
so much
was.
fun.
I mean, it's always hosting. This is always so much fun, but this was a great night.